The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never seen such panic. Representatives from 200 star systems filled the curved chamber, their voices creating a symphony of fear in dozens of languages. At the center of it all stood High Chancellor Vextar, his blue skin pale with worry. "Order! Order!" Vextar's voice boomed through the translation devices. The noise slowly died down. "We all know why we're here. The Vortex Swarm has consumed another system. Kepler 442 is gone. 15 billion souls turned into biomatter for their war machine." A collective shudder ran through the assembly. The Vorthak had appeared 3 years ago from the dark space between galaxies. They were not like other enemies the galaxy had faced. They did not want territory or resources in the traditional sense. They consumed everything, planets, stars, entire civilizations, and turned it all into more of themselves. "Our combined fleets have failed," continued the Chancellor. "The Altarian battle group was destroyed last month. The Centaurian Defense Force lasted only 6 hours against them. We need new ideas, new approaches." That's when all eyes turned to the small section where Earth's delegation sat. Humanity was the newest member of the Galactic Council, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. Most species still saw them as primitive newcomers. Ambassador Taemin stood up slowly. He was a small man by human standards, with graying hair and calm eyes. He wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. "Honored Chancellor, Earth has heard your request for military aid." "Yes," Vextar said, relief in his voice. "How many ships can you contribute? How many soldiers?" Taemin was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his words were careful and measured. "We will not be sending ships or soldiers in the traditional sense." Murmurs of confusion rippled through the chamber. The Draknari representative, a large reptilian creature, spoke up. "What do you mean? We need warriors. We need fleets. How else does one fight a war?" "With respect," Taemin said, "your way of fighting has not worked. The Vorthak Swarm grows stronger with each battle. They turn your fallen ships into their own weapons. They convert your dead soldiers into biomass. Fighting them with armies only makes them more powerful." Admiral Heywan, sitting beside Taemin, leaned forward. She was a tough-looking woman with short black hair and scars on her hands from her years as a combat pilot. "The problem is not the size of your armies," she said. "The problem is how you think about war." "Explain," demanded the Altarian delegate, his golden skin shimmering with anger. Heywan stood up. "You fight with honor. You meet your enemies in open battle. You follow rules of engagement that have existed for thousands of years. The Vorthak don't follow your rules. They are not interested in honorable combat. They want to consume and grow. So what do you propose?" asked Chancellor Vexitar. Taemin smiled, but it was not a warm smile. "Humans will handle the Vorthak problem. We will send our specialists." Specialists. The word was repeated in dozens of languages as delegates tried to understand. "How many specialists?" asked the Centaurian representative. "That's classified," said Taemin simply. The chamber erupted in angry voices. The Draknari delegate slammed his clawed hand on his desk. "This is madness. A handful of humans cannot do what our greatest fleets could not." But there was something in Taemin's eyes that made the wise delegates pause. Back on Earth, in the secure communications room of the Global Defense Command, Director Binwu was already putting plans into motion. "Get me Teams Alpha through Omega," he said to his aide. "Full deployment authorization. Rules of engagement, there are no rules." The aide, a young woman named Sora, blinked in surprise. "Sir, all 24 teams?" "All of them," Binwu confirmed. "And activate the Phantom Protocol." The galaxy asked for an army. They're going to get something much more dangerous. Back in the council chamber, delegates were still arguing when Taemin spoke again. "The Vorthak Swarm operates on a bioneural network. They have central command nodes that control vast sections of their forces. While you've been trying to fight the symptoms, we're going to cure the disease." "Impossible," scoffed the Rigelian delegate. "Those command structures are buried deep within their hive ships. They're protected by millions of warrior forms." "Protected from armies, yes," agreed Admiral Heywan. "But humans don't fight with armies. We fight with precision." "What does that mean?" Chancellor Vextar asked. Taemin looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from across the galaxy. "It means that while you've been trying to fight the Vorthak like they're an army, we're going to treat them like what they really are, a target." "One target?" The Altarian delegate laughed. "There are billions of them across dozens of star systems." "No," Taemin said quietly. There are key nodes, critical points. Remove those and the rest becomes manageable. And how exactly do you plan to reach these nodes? Asked Vextar. The same way humans have always dealt with threats, said Haywan. We don't fight them. We hunt them. The word hunt caused an uncomfortable silence. Most galactic species had evolved beyond predatory instincts millions of years ago. The concept of hunting was alien and disturbing to them. Delegates, Taemin said, you asked Earth for military support. We're providing it. Our teams are already being deployed. Within 30 days you will see results. 30 days? The Centaurian representative's voice was filled with disbelief. The Vorthak will consume 3 more systems in 30 days. No, said Taemin with absolute certainty. They won't. As the human delegation filed out of the chamber, whispers followed them. Some delegates spoke of human arrogance. Others wondered if this young species had some secret weapon they were hiding. None of them understood the truth. Humans didn't have secret weapons. They had something much more dangerous, a completely different way of thinking about war. While other species had evolved to fight with honor, humans had evolved to win. In the depths of space beyond the range of galactic sensors, 12 small ships slipped through the darkness. They carried no markings, broadcast no signals, and appeared on no official records. Each ship held a team of specialists who had spent their entire lives learning how to kill efficiently and silently. The galaxy had asked for an army. Humanity was sending something much worse. They were sending hunters. The galactic fleet assembled in the Zarian system was the largest military force in recorded history. 3,000 ships from dozens of species formed battle lines that stretched across space for millions of kilometers. Massive dreadnoughts sat alongside sleek fighters, their weapons charged and ready for the coming battle. Admiral Korith of the Altarian Navy stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical displays with growing confidence. This time will be different, he told his officers. This time we have enough firepower to break their swarms. But even as he spoke, doubt gnawed at him. They had said the same thing 3 times before. Each time the Vorthak had adapted, evolved, and overwhelmed them through sheer numbers. Far from the main fleet, 12 small human ships hung in the darkness. They were so small that most alien sensors dismissed them as debris. The ships had no names, only numbers. Ship 7 contained Do-Yun and his team of 11 specialists. Do-Yun floated in the ship's command center, studying holographic displays of Vorthak bioships. Unlike the alien commanders planning massive fleet engagements, he was looking for something very different. He was looking for weaknesses. Target acquired, said Nari, the team's cyber specialist. She was young, barely 25, but her fingers danced across control surfaces with the skill of someone who had grown up in the digital age. The hive ship in Sector 77 Alpha has exposed bioneural conduits along its dorsal ridge. Distance? Asked Do-Yun. 400 kilometers from the main fleet engagement zone, replied Kyung-ho, the demolitions expert. He was studying the structural scans with the focused intensity of an artist examining a masterpiece. Perfect isolation. No backup from other Vorthak units, Do-Yun nodded. While the aliens prepared for another massive battle, humans had spent weeks studying the enemy. They had learned something that the galactic species refused to believe. The Vorthak swarm was not actually a swarm at all. It was a network. Each hive ship contained thousands of warrior forms, but they all received orders from a central bioneural node. Kill the node and the warriors became mindless animals. The aliens had never tried this approach, because it required getting inside the hive ships, something their honor-based combat doctrines considered impossible. Humans didn't care about honor. Beginning approach, announced the pilot, a quiet woman named Su-Jin. The ship slipped through space like a shadow, its advanced stealth systems bending sensor waves around its hull. Technology that had taken humanity centuries to develop was now being used for the first time in actual combat. Meanwhile, the main galactic fleet was beginning its assault. Thousands of energy beams lanced through space, striking Vorthak bioships. The alien creatures responded as they always did, releasing clouds of warrior forms to engage the attackers. The battle was exactly what every previous engagement had been, a massive, honorable fight between opposing forces. And like every previous engagement, the Vorthak were winning through attrition. They're doing it again, observed Wu Jin, the team's infiltration specialist. He watched the tactical display with the calm expression of someone who had seen this before. fighting the symptoms instead of the disease. Du Yun's ship slipped past the main battle and approached the isolated hive ship. Up close, the Vorthak vessel was a thing of nightmare beauty. It was alive, its surface pulsing with veins and arteries that carried nutrients to its various organs. Gun ports opened and closed like breathing, and sensor clusters tracked movement with the alertness of predators' eyes. Bio-readings confirm the neural node location, said Nari. Central core, approximately 2 kilometers into the ship's body. How do we get there without fighting through 2 kilometers of warrior forms? Asked Kyung-ho. Du-Yun smiled. We don't fight them. We avoid them. The human ship attached itself to the hive ship's hull with magnetic clamps. To the Vorthak sensors, it looked like a piece of battle debris. Sujin began cutting through the outer bio-armor with a molecular torch while the rest of the team prepared their equipment. Remember, Do-Yun told his team, we're not here to fight a war. We're here to perform surgery. They entered the hive ship through the small hole Sujin had cut. Inside, the vessel was like being trapped inside a living creature. The walls pulsed with a heartbeat. The air was thick with organic compounds that made breathing difficult even through their masks. Nari immediately began mapping the ship's bio-neural network. The node is protected by 3 layers of warrior forms, she reported. Standard approach would require fighting through about 500 enemies. Good thing we're not using a standard approach, said Woo-jin. He was already studying the ship's internal structure, looking for service tunnels and maintenance passages that the Vorthak had never considered securing. While the team worked, the main battle raged outside. The Galactic fleet was losing ships at an alarming rate. The Vorthak warrior forms fought with suicidal determination, using their own destroyed bodies as weapons against the alien ships. Admiral Koreth watched his forces being slowly overwhelmed and wondered where the human support was. He had expected to see human ships joining the battle, but his sensors showed nothing. He didn't know that 12 human teams were already inside 12 different hive ships, moving like ghosts through passages that the Vorthak had never thought to guard. Du-Yun's team reached the central chamber after 2 hours of careful movement. The bio-neural node was beautiful in its own way, a massive organic brain that pulsed with electrical activity. Millions of nerve pathways connected it to the rest of the ship. This is the target, Do-Yun said quietly. Everything else is just meat. Kyung-ho placed his explosive charges with surgical precision. The bombs were designed to destroy the neural pathways without damaging the surrounding structure. Charges set. 30-second timer. All teams report status, Do-Yun said into his communicator. 11 other team leaders reported ready. Across a dozen hive ships, human specialists were preparing to cut the strings that controlled the Vorthak puppets. Execute, Do-Yun commanded. The explosions were small and precise. To outside observers, nothing seemed to happen. The hive ships continued moving, their weapons continued firing, and the warrior forms continued fighting. Then, slowly, the change became apparent. Vorthak formations began losing coordination. Ships that had been moving in perfect synchronization started drifting apart. Warrior forms that had fought within human discipline began attacking each other. Admiral Koreth stared at his tactical display in amazement. What's happening to them? His science officer, a Centaurian named Veltar, was running rapid scans. Their bio-neural networks are failing. The coordination patterns are breaking down. Within minutes, the organized Vorthak assault had become chaos. Hive ships fired on their own forces. Warrior forms flew in random directions. The deadly efficiency that had made the swarm so terrifying was simply gone. The human team slipped away from the dying hive ships as quietly as they had arrived. Their work was done. Ambassador Taemin's voice came over the fleet communication system. Admiral Koreth, you may now engage the remaining Vorthak forces. They should be somewhat more manageable. The battle that followed was barely a battle at all. Without their neural coordination, the Vorthak were just animals. Dangerous animals, but animals nonetheless. The Galactic fleet destroyed them with ease. Later, as the alien commanders tried to understand what had happened, they received a simple message from the human teams. 12 hive ships neutralized. Bio-neural network severed. Targets eliminated, 12 teams. 12 ships. 144 human. Specialists had accomplished what 3,000 alien warships could. Not the galaxy was beginning to understand that they had seriously underestimated humanity's approach to warfare. The success at Xerion had sent shockwaves through both the Galactic Council and the Vorthak swarm. For the first time in 3 years, a major Vorthak force had been completely destroyed. But while the alien species celebrated, the humans were already planning their next moves. Su-Jin lay perfectly still on the asteroid's surface, her body temperature regulated to match the cold rock beneath her. She had been in position for 18 hours, waiting for the perfect shot. Through her rifle's scope, she could see the Vorthak nursery ship floating in space 300 kilometers away. The ship was massive, larger than most space stations. Its purpose was to create new warrior forms, growing them in biopods that covered its hull like tumors. Intelligence reports indicated that this single ship could produce 50,000 new Vorthak soldiers every day. Target confirmed, Su-Jin whispered into her communicator. Broodmother is in the central breeding chamber. The broodmother was the key to the entire operation. She was a unique Vorthak organism, part leader and part factory, capable of laying the genetic templates that created all other Vorthak forms. Kill her and the nursery ship would become useless. Wind speed? Asked her spotter, Jiho, who was hidden in a crater 50 meters away. No wind in space, Su-Jin replied with a slight smile. But accounting for the ship's rotation and the target's movement pattern. She had been studying the broodmother's behavior for days. The creature followed a predictable routine, emerging from her protected chamber every 6 hours to inspect the breeding pods. She would be exposed for exactly 90 seconds, 47 seconds until window opens, Jiho reported. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Wu Jin's team was executing a very different kind of mission. They had infiltrated a Vorthak research facility built inside a captured planet's core. The facility was developing new bioweapons, viruses designed to destroy non-Vorthak lifeforms. Wu Jin had undergone extensive body modification for this mission. Synthetic skin, altered bone structure, and hormone treatments had changed his appearance enough to fool casual Vorthak observation. To any scanning system, he appeared to be a captured alien slave. The viral laboratory is 3 levels down, whispered Yejin, the team medic, through their encrypted communication system. She was monitoring bio-readings from outside the facility. Security is heavy but predictable. The plan was simple in concept but terrifying in execution. Instead of destroying the viral laboratory, they were going to steal the Vorthak's own bioweapons and turn them against their creators. Yejin had spent months studying Vorthak biology, learning their genetic structure and finding their weaknesses. She had discovered that the same rapid adaptation that made them dangerous in combat also made them vulnerable to certain types of engineered viruses. I'm at the laboratory entrance, Wu Jin reported. Guard rotation in 30 seconds. Back at the nursery ship, Su-Jin was making final adjustments to her rifle. The weapon was a marvel of human engineering, capable of accelerating projectiles to incredible speeds across vast distances. But this shot would require more than technology. It would require perfect timing and absolute precision. Target emerging, Jiho announced. Su-Jin watched through her scope as the broodmother appeared. The creature was hideous and beautiful at the same time, a massive bioform covered in pulsing organs and trailing nerve clusters. She moved with the confident grace of a creature that had never known fear. 10 seconds to optimal position, Jiho said. Su-Jin's breathing slowed. Her heartbeat steadied. Everything else in the universe seemed to fade away except for the crosshairs in her scope and the target beyond. Fire, Jiho whispered. The rifle fired with a sound like thunder. The projectile crossed 300 kilometers of space in less than 2 seconds, striking the broodmother precisely in her primary neural cluster. The massive creature convulsed once and died instantly. Target eliminated, Su-Jin reported. Beginning extraction. The effect was immediate. Without the broodmother's genetic guidance, the breeding pods began producing malformed creatures that died within hours of birth. The nursery ship, which had been the source of countless Vorthak warriors, became a floating graveyard. At the viral laboratory, Wu Jin had successfully accessed the main research computers. Yejin's modifications to the Vorthak bioweapons were elegant in their simplicity. The viruses would still target non-Vorthak lifeforms, but they would also carry a secondary payload that would activate 48 hours later, attacking the Vorthak's own immune systems. Upload complete, Wu Jin reported as he inserted the modified viral data into the Vorthak network. They'll start using our versions within hours. Extraction point in 10 minutes, said the team's pilot. Minho, from their hidden ship. But even as these missions succeeded, the most ambitious operation was taking place in the Kronos sector. Nari's cyber warfare team had identified the Vorthak's primary communication hub, a massive biocomputer that coordinated swarm activities across multiple star systems. The hub was protected by layers of security that the Vorthak considered impenetrable. They had never encountered an enemy capable of digital warfare. Their entire network was vulnerable to someone who understood how to attack information systems. "I'm inside their primary data stream," Nari reported from her ship's command center. "Their security is biological, not digital." They never considered that someone might attack their network directly. Her team had spent weeks learning how the Vorthak biocomputers functioned. The creatures used living neural tissue to process information, creating a network that was part machine and part organism. It was incredibly efficient but had one major weakness. It trusted all information that came from verified Vorthak sources. "Beginning Phase 2, announced Hyunwoo, the psychological warfare specialist. "Transmitting false orders now." The orders were carefully crafted to appear legitimate while causing maximum confusion. Vorthak forces across 3 sectors received commands to attack their own supply lines. Research facilities were told to begin developing weapons against their own species. Nursery ships were instructed to cease production and redirect resources to non-existent threats. "They're actually following the orders," reported So Young, who was monitoring Vorthak communications. "Their trust in their own network is working against them." Within hours, Vorthak forces throughout the affected regions were in chaos. Supply convoys attacked their own escorts. Research stations began destroying their own work. Military formations broke apart as commanders received contradictory orders. The beauty of the operation was that the Vorthak couldn't understand what was happening. Their biocomputers showed that all orders were legitimate, coming from verified command sources. They had no concept of information warfare, no experience with enemies who could lie to machines. As reports flooded in from all 3 operations, Director Binwoo studied the results from his command center on Earth. The numbers were staggering. 3 major Vorthak assets had been eliminated or compromised using fewer than 50 human operatives. "Casualty report?" he asked his aide, Sora. "0 human casualties," she reported. "All teams extracted successfully." Binwoo nodded. This was how humans fought wars. Not with massive armies clashing in open battle, but with precise strikes that removed key targets. While aliens thought in terms of honor and courage, humans thought in terms of efficiency and results. The Galactic Council was beginning to receive reports of the operations. Alien commanders who had expected to see human fleets joining their battles instead heard stories of impossible assassinations, viral warfare, and digital attacks that seemed like magic. Chancellor Vextar summoned Ambassador Taemin for an emergency meeting. "What are your people doing out there?" he demanded. "Our intelligence reports are disturbing." Taemin's expression remained calm. "We're solving the Vorthak problem as promised, by assassinating individual creatures from impossible distances, by somehow corrupting their bioweapons, by attacking their computer systems." Vextar's voice carried a mix of awe and horror. "By fighting efficiently," Taemin replied simply. "The Vorthak swarm is not invincible. It's just a system. Every system has weaknesses. We find those weaknesses and exploit them." The truth was becoming clear to the galactic observers. Humanity didn't just have different technology. They had a fundamentally different approach to warfare itself. Where other species saw enemies to be defeated in honorable combat, humans saw problems to be solved through applied violence. And they were very good at solving problems. The Vorthak Overmind was experiencing something entirely new: fear. For the first time in the species' existence, the collective consciousness that guided the swarm felt uncertain about victory. Across dozens of star systems, carefully planned operations were failing in ways that made no sense. The queen mother of the primary hive floated in her biochamber, her massive brain processing millions of data streams simultaneously. Neural pathways that had operated flawlessly for centuries were now reporting impossible failures. Nursery ships went silent. Research facilities destroyed themselves. Military formations received orders that led to self-destruction. "The small forms are responsible," she communicated to her war leaders through bio-neural links. "The humans. They fight without pattern, without honor, without sense." War leader Thexmore, commanding the 7th Fleet, sent back confused thoughts. They do not engage our forces directly. They attack infrastructure, communications, breeding facilities. How do we fight an enemy that refuses to fight? This was the question that had begun haunting the Vorthak leadership. Their entire military doctrine was based on overwhelming force applied directly against enemy armies. They had never faced an opponent who struck at support systems while avoiding direct confrontation. But the Overmind was learning. Evolution and adaptation were core to Vorthak nature. If the humans wanted to fight indirectly, the swarm would adapt its defenses accordingly. Implement Protocol 779, the Queen Mother ordered. All critical facilities will be hardened against infiltration. All communication networks will be physically isolated. All command structures will be moved to secure locations. The humans had shown the Vorthak their weaknesses. Now the swarm would eliminate those weaknesses. Du Yun received the intelligence reports while his team prepared for their next mission. The Vorthak were changing their patterns, improving their security, making traditional infiltration much more difficult. They're learning, observed Kyung-ho as he studied the updated facility schematics. The communication hub we targeted last month is now surrounded by 3 layers of biological sensors. No way to approach undetected. Good, said Do Yun, surprising his team. It means they're afraid. Fear makes creatures do predictable things. Nari looked up from her computer displays. Sir, how is increased security predictable? Do Yun smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Because they're still thinking defensively. They're trying to protect what they have instead of considering what we might do next. The new mission parameters had come directly from Director Bin-woo himself. Human intelligence had discovered something that changed everything. The Vorthak were not native to this galaxy. They were refugees, running from something even worse than themselves. The data we recovered from their research facilities tells the story, explained So Young, the team's biotechnology expert. The Vorthak swarm was created as a weapon by another species. When that species was destroyed, the swarm continued operating under its original programming. Consume everything. Grow constantly, eliminate all threats. So they're not really evil, said Yejin quietly. They're just following their nature. Doesn't matter, Do-Yun replied. Evil or not, they're still a threat that needs to be eliminated. But the discovery had given human strategists a new approach. Instead of just fighting the swarm's current form, they could attack its programming directly. The Vorthak biocomputers still carried the original code that had created them. Change that code and you could change the entire species. Wu Jin's team had been assigned the most dangerous part of the mission. They would infiltrate the primary hive itself, the massive bioconstruct that housed the Queen Mother and the Overmind. Their goal was not destruction, but reprogramming. The infiltration route will take us through 17 levels of security, Wu Jin explained to his team as they studied the hive's structure. Each level is designed to stop a different type of threat, but they're all designed to stop armies, not individuals. The primary hive was the size of a small moon, its surface covered with defensive weapons and sensor arrays. Millions of warrior forms patrolled its corridors. At its center, the Queen Mother's chamber was protected by layers of biological and technological defenses. How do we even get inside? Asked Jin Ho, the team's communications specialist. Wu Jin pointed to a section of the hive's outer shell. Waste disposal. Even the Vorthak have to get rid of biological waste. The disposal tubes are too small for their warrior forms but perfect for humans. Meanwhile, So Jin's sniper team had taken position on a captured asteroid field near the primary hive. Their mission was to provide overwatch and prevent any Vorthak reinforcements from interfering with the infiltration. Count 47 patrol ships, reported her spotter Young Min. Standard search patterns. They're not expecting trouble from this direction. Su Jin was studying the hive through her scope, looking for critical targets. If something goes wrong with the infiltration, we need to be ready to create a distraction. Her rifle had been modified for this mission, equipped with specialized ammunition designed to cause maximum damage to Vorthak bioships. Each shot could potentially cripple a vessel the size of a human destroyer. Inside the primary hive, Wu Jin's team was making their way through passages that had never been designed for defense. The Vorthak had never considered that an enemy might use their own waste systems as an infiltration route. Bio-readings show we're approaching the first neural junction, whispered Hyun-woo, monitoring their progress with specialized sensors. The local network density is increasing. They moved like ghosts through the hive's organic corridors. Every surface was alive, pulsing with the rhythm of a massive heartbeat. The air was thick with chemical signals that the Vorthak used for internal communication. Neural junction in sight, reported Minsu, the team's tech specialist. Beginning interface preparation. The neural junction was a cluster of bioneural pathways that carried communication between different sections of the hive. By tapping into these pathways, the human team could access the Vorthak's internal network without triggering security protocols. Connection established, Minsu announced. I'm reading the network traffic now. Incredible. They process information at a rate that makes our best computers look primitive. But processing speed wasn't the same as security. The Vorthak network was designed for efficiency, not protection. It had never occurred to them that someone might try to hack a living brain. I'm inside their core programming, Nari reported from her remote location. She was linked to Minsu's equipment through quantum communication, allowing her to work directly with the Vorthak network. The original species that created them called themselves the Architects. They built the Vorthak as a last resort against something called the Devourers. Can you access the programming controls? Asked Wu Jin, working on it. The code is incredibly complex. It's not just software, it's actual genetic instructions embedded in their neural structure. Changing it will literally rewrite what they are. As Nari worked, alarms began sounding throughout the hive. The Vorthak had finally detected the human intrusion, but they couldn't locate the source. The infiltration team was too small and too well hidden. Multiple warrior forms converging on our general area, reported Hyunwoo. They know something is wrong, but they don't know what. How much more time do you need? Wu Jin asked Nari. 10 minutes, maybe 15. The security is adapting to my intrusion attempts. That's when Sujin's voice came through the communication system. Multiple Vorthak fleets approaching the primary hive. Looks like they're bringing reinforcements. Take them out, ordered Do-Yun from his command position. Buy our people more time. Sujin's rifle spoke with the voice of thunder. Across millions of kilometers of space, her shots found their targets with impossible precision. Vorthak ships that had seemed invulnerable to conventional weapons were crippled by single projectiles placed in exactly the right locations. Enemy fleet neutralized, she reported, but they'll send more. Inside the hive, Nari was fighting a different kind of battle. The Vorthak biocomputers were actively trying to prevent her intrusion, creating new security protocols in real time. It was like playing chess against an opponent who could change the rules during the game. Got it, she announced finally. I'm into the core programming. Beginning modification now. The changes she made were subtle but fundamental. Instead of consuming everything in their path, the Vorthak would now seek to preserve and protect. Instead of viewing all other life as threats, they would see them as valuable resources to be guarded. Modification complete, Nari reported. The new programming is propagating through their neural network. Full implementation in 36 hours. Extraction time, ordered Wu Jin. Let's get out of here before they figure out what we've done. The team retreated through the same waste disposal system they had used to enter. Behind them, the primary hive continued functioning normally. The Vorthak had no idea that their fundamental nature had just been rewritten. Within days, the effects would become apparent. The terrifying swarm that had consumed star systems would begin showing interest in preservation and protection. The galaxy's greatest threat would become its most dedicated guardian. But for now, the humans slipped away into the darkness, their mission. The change began slowly, almost imperceptibly. Across Vorthak-controlled space, feeding patterns shifted. Ships that had been stripping planets bare suddenly stopped their consumption. Warrior forms that had attacked everything in sight began showing protective behaviors toward smaller life forms. At first, the Galactic Council thought it was a trick. They're planning something, insisted Admiral Koreth during an emergency session. The Vorthak don't just stop being destructive. It's not in their nature. But Ambassador Taemin knew better. He sat quietly in the council chamber, watching the confused alien delegates argue about something they couldn't understand. The humans had done exactly what they said they would do. They had solved the Vorthak problem. Chancellor Vextar called for order. Our observers report that Vorthak forces in the Kepler sector are actively protecting colony worlds from asteroid impacts. In the Centauri region, they're cleaning pollution from damaged ecosystems. This behavior makes no sense. It makes perfect sense, said Taman, finally speaking up. We changed them. The chamber fell silent. The word changed carried implications that no one wanted to consider. What do you mean, changed? Asked the Draknari representative, his voice filled with suspicion. We reprogrammed their core behavioral patterns, Taman explained calmly. The Vorthak were created as weapons by another species. Their original programming told them to consume and destroy. We modified that programming. Now they preserve and protect. The implications hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. If humans could reprogram an entire species, what else were they capable of? That's impossible, stammered the Altarian delegate. You can't just change what a species is at a fundamental level. We can, said Admiral Haywan, standing beside Taman. And we did. Deep in space, Do-Yun's team was conducting the final operation of the campaign. They had infiltrated the last major Vorthak facility, a massive research station where the Overmind was attempting to understand what had happened to their species. The Queen Mother's confusion was palpable through the bio-neural network. Her warrior forms were refusing orders to attack. Her research teams were studying ways to improve ecosystem preservation instead of developing weapons. Her entire species was acting against every instinct they had developed over millions of years. The small forms have done something to us, she communicated to her remaining war leaders. They have poisoned our thoughts, corrupted our purpose. But even as she spoke, the Queen Mother found herself concerned about the welfare of captured alien prisoners in her facility. The new programming was affecting her too, making her question the value of destruction and consumption. Du-Yun's team moved through the research station with the confidence of hunters who knew their prey was already defeated. The Vorthak security systems were still active, but the creatures manning them were increasingly reluctant to use lethal force. This feels wrong, observed Kyung-ho as they passed a group of Vorthak technicians who simply watched them go by. They should be trying to kill us. The programming changes are taking full effect, explained So-young. They're physically incapable of unnecessary violence now. Their neural pathways have been rewritten to prioritize preservation over destruction. The team's mission was simple: ensure that the Queen Mother survived the transition. The new programming would make her a guardian of galactic life rather than its destroyer. But only if she lived long enough for the changes to complete. They found her in the central biochamber, a massive space filled with neural networks and organic computing systems. The Queen Mother herself was enormous. Her body a fusion of biological and technological components that pulsed with alien life. I know why you are here, she said, her voice translated through bioacoustic systems. You have come to ensure your victory is complete. We've come to ensure your survival, Do-Yun replied, surprising her. I do not understand. Your species was created as a weapon. You were programmed to destroy. That programming has been changed. You will now be driven to preserve and protect life throughout the galaxy, but you need to survive the transition for that to happen. The Queen Mother's massive brain processed this information slowly. You could have simply destroyed us. Instead, you have healed us? Destruction is wasteful, said Do-Yun. You have capabilities that can benefit the galaxy. Better to redirect those capabilities than waste them. As they spoke, reports were coming in from across Vorthak space. The transformation was accelerating. Swarm fleets that had terrorized the galaxy for years were now offering assistance to struggling colonies. Bioships that had been designed for war were being converted into hospital ships and environmental restoration vessels. The Galactic Council was struggling to accept the new reality. Species that had lived in terror of the Vorthak swarm were now receiving offers of protection and aid from their former enemies. This is unprecedented, Chancellor Vexitar said during another emergency session. An entire species has been fundamentally altered. The philosophical implications alone, the practical implications are what matter, interrupted Taemin. The Vorthak threat is over. The galaxy is safe. Our mission is complete. Your mission? The Rigelian delegate's voice carried a note of fear. What exactly was your mission, Ambassador? Taemin looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from hundreds of worlds. You asked us to deal with the Vorthak problem. We dealt with it. By changing their entire species without consent, by altering their fundamental nature. The Centaurian representative was almost shouting. What gives you the right to rewrite the biology of an entire civilization? They were consuming the galaxy, Admiral Haywan said simply. They had to be stopped. We chose to save them instead of destroying them. The word instead hung in the air like a threat. The delegates were beginning to understand that humanity had offered the Vorthak a choice they hadn't even known existed: change or die. Director Binwu, monitoring the council session from Earth, smiled with satisfaction. The mission had been a complete success. Not only had humanity eliminated the Vorthak threat, they had done so in a way that demonstrated their capabilities to the entire galaxy. "Sir," asked his aide Sora, "what do we do if the council objects to our methods?" "They won't," Binwu replied confidently. "They're too afraid," and he was right. The alien delegates were realizing that humanity had capabilities beyond their imagination. If humans could reprogram an entire species, what could they do to individual governments? Individual planets? Individual aliens who might be seen as threats? The Draknari representative voiced what everyone was thinking. "If you can change the Vorthak, you can change any of us." Taemin's response was quiet but carried clearly through the chamber. "Yes, we can." The silence that followed was deafening. 200 species sat in stunned quiet, contemplating a universe where humanity could rewrite the nature of any threat they encountered. Finally, Chancellor Vextar spoke. "The Vorthak problem is resolved. This council recognizes the effectiveness of human methods. Are there any other galactic threats that require attention?" It was a carefully worded question. The subtext was clear. If there were other problems, the galaxy would prefer human solutions to human targets. "None at present," Taemin replied. "Humanity is committed to galactic peace and stability." As the council session ended, delegates filed out in subdued silence. The galaxy had asked for an army to fight their war. Instead, they had received something far more dangerous: problem solvers who viewed the complete elimination or transformation of threats as the only acceptable solution. The Vorthak swarm, the galaxy's greatest terror, had become its newest protector in less than 6 months, and it had been accomplished by fewer than 300 human specialists using methods that most species considered impossible. Back on Earth, in the secure communications room of the Global Defense Command, Director Binwu was already planning the next phase of human expansion into galactic space. The galaxy had seen what humanity could do when asked nicely. He hoped they would never find out what humans could do when they weren't asked at all. In the depths of space, the former Vorthak Queen Mother was broadcasting a message to all ships in her fleet. Priority directive: protect all sentient life. Preserve ecosystem stability. Eliminate threats to galactic peace. The hunters had become guardians. The destroyers had become protectors. And the galaxy would never forget who had made it possible. Humanity had not sent an army. They had sent death squads, and the death squads had chosen to give life instead of taking it. That choice made them more terrifying than any weapon.